Welcome to the Event Planners Workshop, and I'm so pleased that you've decided to explore the Event Planners Workshop handbook today. This handbook has everything you need to help you plan the perfect event, and it actually came about from me working with hundreds and hundreds of different kinds of event planners when I was working in a venue helping them put their events on. It's basically a culmination of all the questions that I used to get asked when people would ask me how to plan the perfect event. It's also based in foundational knowledge from study. The author of something called MBOK, Event Management Body of Knowledge, is a really exciting place to explore, and I certainly encourage you to do so. Julia Rutherford Silvers is the author. It's a really interesting place to dig deep into event planning and really explore what all the things are that bring it together. It is, however, a very complex subject, and that's why I wanted to create this handbook. It brings some lightness to this subject. It brings the joy back into the planning process, which is what I wanted to do for you. So let's have a quick look inside. First of all, we have the design section of the workbook. I believe there's 5 fundamental elements to the event planning process, and design is the first one. If you set your event up effectively in relation to how you're going to design your audience experience, you'll have a much greater chance at success of your event. The design is the expression of the goals and the objectives of the event. What's your vision for the event? What do you want your audience to experience? In the workbook, we explore some ways through your content, your programming, your theme. What is it that you actually want to generate for your audience to experience? Secondly, we look at the marketing. Now, marketing is one of the most important elements that is often missed, and I take you through a bit of a process here. I get you to think of it in a bit of a logical manner, and I also encourage you to explore outside of social media. So of course we have our social media, and we know that we can create our events on the relevant platforms, but there's lots of traditional media out there as well that is often missed, and I believe this offers great opportunity to get in front of people that other people aren't getting in front of because they're spending 100% of their time on social media. So looking at the look and feel of your event as well, all of those kind of things, how are your material, your images, your colors, how that all comes together, and how you bring it to the forefront, so when people see your event, they know that it's your event no matter what part of the element they see. The third thing we look at is operations, and operations is actually executing the event, getting into the nitty-gritty, the run sheets, the programming, understanding the resources that you need to execute the perfect event. We look at the coordination of the people, the products and services, start to get into some venue selection, food and beverage selection. I give you some tips and ideas on how to do that effectively, and there's a few checklists in there as well. The administration section looks at the allocation, direction and control of resources. That means things like your budget. We go through a budget, and I encourage you to look at a few different elements in your budgeting process. There's also the record keeping, the CRM. How are you going to keep in touch with people all the time? What does that look like? What does your customer journey look like? So that's the administration side of things. And then there's contract negotiation and risk. Now, whether you think you're going to sign contracts or not, you will absolutely need to come to a few agreements regardless of the size and complexity of your event. You will most likely sign a venue agreement. At the very least, even if you're holding your event in a park, if it's a community festival in a park, you will need to go to council, and you'll need to get approval for that, and you'll need to sign an agreement with council. So at the very least, there will be some sort of agreement that you'll need to sign. And I just encourage you, there's a few areas here that I get you to have a look at and make sure that you're covering yourself. I also encourage you to look at COVID-safe event planning and how to keep your patrons safe, and to explore any licenses, regulations, anything like that you need to cover. And lastly, of course, I encourage you to look at a risk assessment. And this doesn't have to be a big, heavy-duty task. It's really quite simply running the event through your mind and just exploring some areas that may be at risk to you, and they may be at risk to your guests, clients, delegates as well. So the workbook has all of those subjects in it, and the way it's laid out, I hope, is really easy. I'm getting really good feedback on the workbook, so I think it's really easy to follow. And essentially, each section has its heading, of course. So if we take the design page, for example, so you know you're in the design phase. There's 5 phases to the event planning process. And first of all, I go through each element of the phase that we're talking about, and I explain what all of the different concepts mean. So if we take design, for example, content, entertainment, environment. So content, I explain what content design is, the selection of appropriate topics, formats and presenters to achieve the communication objectives. So there's a couple of pages in each section that outlines each step, each element that I want you to pay attention to and start to think about. Once we go through the explanation process, there's a checklist. So I want you to be able to come back after you've finished each phase and have a look at this checklist and make sure that you understand each element. So again, if we look at design, the checklist is the content, including the topic, format and presenters, has been considered. You've looked at the environment and how this fits in with your audience, how you want this to be delivered and what your content looks like, what you're going to offer your guests in relation to accommodation, refreshments, that kind of thing, what your production needs are, whether you need big stage, small stage, no stage, that kind of thing, what you're going to include in your program, and what will the theme be that's supporting your event goals and objectives. So that's what a checklist looks like. So we'll come back to that checklist and just make sure that you've crossed all of those things off in your planning process. And then thirdly, the third part of each phase is the worksheet. In the worksheet, again, I go through each of the elements that I explained before, but I encourage you to explore a few different things about it. So the content, what is the topic of your presentation, event, conference or meeting? Describe the format you'll be delivering it in, who the presenters will be and what they will talk about. Now this doesn't need to be an essay. First run through of this workbook, I encourage you to just write a couple of lines in each space. The goal first time through is to get all of those thoughts that are in your mind, that are wrapping around in your mind, get all of those out onto a bit of paper. Now you can either type in this workbook digitally, or you can print it on paper, or you can go and get it printed at your local Officeworks or wherever you would normally get your printing done. And you can have a beautiful bound workbook. I've decided to do it as a beautiful bound workbook because I really love to work on paper. So that's what I've done. I've gone and had it printed on gorgeous paper, and I just love the colours. I love Shelby on the front of it. But as you can see, there's nearly 40 pages here of everything that you need to plan the perfect event. So as I say, each element has 3 sections in it. So there's the outline of the explanation of the parts of the particular phase that you're in. Secondly, there's a checklist that you'll come back to at the end of the phase to just make sure that you've thought about all the things that you need to think about. And thirdly, there's worksheets that go through each element of each section, and I give you some prompts and ideas of things that you need to think about. Now, once you have finished this workbook, you can actually take this event of yours that you've created and you can start implementing it now. That's the beauty of running through this and just writing a couple of lines in each one. You can actually go from idea to launch in a weekend. Less than a weekend, actually. You could just do this in a day, even half a day. If it depends how much you've got sorted in your mind already, but you can actually use this workbook, take from a few hours to a few days, and by the time you've finished the workbook, you will have created your event on whatever platform you want to create it on. So you can use a ticketing system, a registration system, you can have a Facebook event, a LinkedIn event, you can share it on Instagram, any of those things, but you will have enough. You will have enough of a plan to be able to launch your event, get tickets on sale, or at the very least start talking about it and getting interest in your event. So I really hope that you will join me on this journey. When you buy this workbook, you get a video of me going through this workbook in very, very much detail. There's various different workshops that I've done on this as well, and these videos get sent to you along the way too. So explore, have a look down the page, and I really hope that you will buy it and join me on this event planning journey. Have a great day.